So The Martian is written by Andy Weir, and is the story of Mark Watney, who's an astronaut who's been stranded on Mars. And I first heard about this book from seeing a trailer, and I had mixed feelings about the trailer. What excited me was Matt Damon and Ridley Scott, and also the plot. I thought the plot sounded really good. An astronaut stranded by himself on Mars, and I thought, oh wow, it's like a mix of like Castaway and like Gravity, and you know, it even says on the book, Gravity meets Robinson Crusoe. Utterly nail-biting. There's the full review on there from the Financial Times. The thing that made me nervous when watching the trailer is the trailer seemed to give a bit too much away. There was a huge cast, and I thought, oh, so we're going to see stuff on Earth as well, you know, and to me that feels like, you know, I'd rather just see Mark Watney on Mars and, you know, see him by himself struggling with the situation, because that worked perfectly in Tom Hanks's Castaway. And you know, I feel like if it cut between Mars and Earth all the time, then you know we wouldn't feel that sense of isolation that Mark does. The lighting's changed, professionalism. I've finished this book because I was interested in the plot and I wanted to know, so I read the book, and I'm happy to say that all the problems I had are gone. The plot of this book is brilliant, and it's part of this exciting genre that I like to call science fiction that's possible in real life. The most recent film of that was Gravity, because Gravity is not a science fiction film, it is a thriller, because the stuff that happens to Sandra Bullock in that film is possible in real life. It is possible for an astronaut to be in Earth's orbit and, you know, float around in space. That is possible. It's a scary thought, and I don't think it's happened before, but it is possible. The Martian is different in that sense, because we haven't sent people to Mars yet, but honestly, we're not that far away. It'll probably happen in my lifetime, you know, and that's exciting to me. So in the story of this film, missions to Mars have become a common thing now. So Mark Watney is on the 3rd mission to Mars. The first crew, they came back as heroes. The second crew came back, got a cup of coffee and a pat on the back, and now we're just the standard mission. So how Mark gets separated, if you've seen the trailer, is that a storm happens, and then the storm gets really bad, and NASA tells the crew to abort the mission. And then when they abort the mission, Mark Watney gets hit by a rock or something, and then goes astray, and then the crew have to make a tough decision, and they end up leaving. And Mark Watney, who they all had a good reason to think he was dead, I won't spoil anything there, you know, survives by a miracle, and that's the only unrealistic bit in the story, how he survived. Like, it's explained well, but it's just sheer luck how he survived. And now he's stuck on this planet by himself. He has no communications. He has no rocket to get him off Mars. He's just left with the small base and the limited supply of food. Now, like, whenever I tell people about this book, everyone says, "Oh, but how does he breathe and stuff?" And it's like, well, I mean, obviously, so he has things that help him survive. So he has a base called the habitat, or just the hab for short. And in that hab, he has an oxygenator, like something that, you know, breaks apart carbon dioxide and makes oxygen for him to breathe. He has a water reclaimer, which takes the water vapour that he breathes out and turns into water for him to drink. I'll read the back of the book to you. I'm stranded on Mars. I have no way to communicate with Earth. If the oxygenator breaks down, I'll suffocate. If the water reclaimer breaks down, I'll die of thirst. If the habitat breaches, I'll just kind of explode. If none of those things happen, I'll eventually run out of food and starve to death. I'm fucked. That's what it says. But easily the best part in the story is the character of Mark Watney. He is honestly one of my favourite characters in a book of all time, ever. He's so ingenuitive, he's so funny, and he's a proper nerd. Like, he's one of the best characters ever written, like, honestly. Almost this entire book is written in log entries. So he's making log entries of him trying to survive on Mars, because, you know, what else would you do really in that situation? One of the first lines in the book, and probably the film, is, you know, he says this monologue about him being stranded on Mars, and he says, "So I'm going to science the shit out of it." And yeah, he does science the shit out of it, and it's so interesting to see, you know, how he calculates how to survive, you know, how much water he's going to need, how much food he's going to need, all this stuff that he needs to work out how to fix everything in case it breaks, how he's going to make a device to communicate with Earth. All that stuff, you'd think it'd be boring because it's all sciencey and stuff, but it isn't, and that's what surprised me, because what this science stuff does is makes it more realistic. And I mean, myself included and many other reviewers have said this film, I keep saying film, this book feels like non-fiction rather than science fiction. It feels like it could really happen. What surprised me in this book is how funny it was. Like, Mark Watney, as I've said, is a really funny guy, and that makes the book, you know, entertaining throughout. What disappointed me in the trailer, with the first trailer that came out for this film, it didn't have any of that humour in it, so which I thought was a bit disappointing. Okay, so we'll get to the stuff where I was nervous about the book, and that's where it cut back to Earth. But that stuff really worked and told a completely different story. So the story on Earth is, you know, there's satellites all over space. You know, NASA have been sending satellites all the time, and they eventually find out that Mark Watney is alive, but they can't communicate with each other because Mark Watney hasn't got a radio or anything. But NASA know he's alive, and what the story is there is they're trying to work out a way how to rescue him. But then there's all these political debates about, you know, can we afford to send something to go save him? And, you know, stuff like that, and there's all sorts of political dispute there, and it's pretty interesting stuff. Like, and although it is interesting, you do feel like, okay, I want to get back to Mark now, that's where the meat of the story is, and it is the meat of the story. But the stuff on Earth is equally interesting, and that made for a better book overall, I felt. So now I'm going to get to the anticipation for the film. So I'm now super excited for this film. It's probably the film I'm third most excited for, next to Star Wars, obviously, and the new James Bond film. Really excited for this film because Matt Damon, I don't think he's ever given a bad performance. I think he'll play Mark Watney perfectly. In some of the clips that I've already seen, yeah, he looked brilliant, and the rest of the cast look really good. And when I look at the cast and the characters in the book, I think, yeah, you're perfect for that role. Yeah, you're perfect for that role. You're also perfect for that role. I think what I'm most excited about is Ridley Scott directing this film, because he's a director, in my opinion, where science fiction go hand in hand. I am a huge fan of all his science fiction films. Alien, amazing. Blade Runner, amazing. Can you see that yet? Prometheus, a lot of people don't like. I think this film's excellent. If you just change one thing in this film, then more people would have liked it. And that was, don't advertise it as an Alien prequel. This Prometheus is not an Alien prequel. Change that one thing, more people would have liked this film. So Ridley Scott, in my opinion, is probably my favourite science fiction director. And he's also an excellent director. He's made several other films that aren't science fiction, like Gladiator, Black Hawk Down. Recently, Ridley Scott has gone on, you know, a bit of a, you know, not great. Like, a lot of people didn't like Prometheus. Exodus, Gods and Kings wasn't that great. I really think that this film, The Martian, could be a return to form for Ridley Scott, which I'm excited about. So I think this book's excellent. I'm really excited to see how they adapt it to film, because the book is almost entirely written in log entries, and I'd like to see how they do that in the film. I hope they don't use too much narration or anything like that. From the film, and what I'm expecting it to look gorgeous, because I mean, Ridley Scott, you know, makes everything look good. I'm expecting, you know, amazing shots of the Mars landscape and stuff like that. I mean, the thing that I'm sort of most excited about how they do, I'm excited to see how they incorporate the science stuff in this film, because it's an absolutely key component in the book, and I'm sure that they'll incorporate it in the film in some way without it becoming too tiresome for audiences to understand. And also the humour, because I mean, that's one of the things that surprised me about the book, how funny it was. And from some of the trailers and stuff and clips that I've seen, I think there will be some of that humour in there, which I'm excited about. So what do you guys think of The Martian coming out? Are you excited for it? Have any of you read the book? It'd be good to see your opinions on that. I know this is a really popular book. Leave a comment, all that kind of stuff, and see you later.